Brooke Ochoa didn't think much of it when she stepped out of her car that warm afternoon in Louise, Texas. She was just hungry, looking forward to a quiet lunch alone, and the small restaurant she often passed by seemed like the perfect stop. Before we continue, please take some time to subscribe to Dailydose, like, and share this video. The place had that cozy, unassuming charm, red bricks, a faded sign above the door, and the faint smell of home-cooked food drifting into the parking lot. She wasn't expecting anything unusual, but sometimes life has a way of hiding miracles in the smallest of moments. As she walked toward the entrance, Brooke noticed a figure a short distance behind her. It was an older woman, moving slowly but steadily, her gray hair tucked neatly behind her ears, her handbag clutched close to her side. Something in the woman's gait, in the careful way she carried herself, made Brooke pause. She held the door open and smiled. It was second nature to her southern manners, a simple act of respect. She didn't know that in that single gesture, the course of her day, and even her outlook on life, would change forever. The older lady looked up, surprised but touched. She thanked Brooke with a sweetness that felt genuine, almost heavy with the weight of gratitude. Together, they stepped inside. The cool air of the restaurant wrapped around them, and the sound of clinking dishes and murmured conversations filled the space. Brooke thought nothing more of it as she turned toward the hostess stand. But then she heard the woman's voice again. "Table for one," the lady said softly. Those 3 words seemed to hang in the air longer than they should have. Brooke froze for just a moment, listening. The phrase echoed in her chest, stirring something deep. Table for one. She herself had come alone, and there was nothing unusual about it. Yet, hearing it spoken aloud by this woman, frail, gentle, and clearly carrying some kind of invisible burden, felt different. Brooke found herself hesitating. She took a step, then stopped, torn between minding her own business and following an instinct that whispered she shouldn't ignore this moment. Finally, she turned. The woman stood there with a polite but tired smile, her eyes scanning the dining room as though she were preparing herself for another solitary meal. Brooke walked up to her with a nervous kind of bravery. "I'm eating by myself, too," Brooke said softly. "Would you like to have lunch together?" For a moment's silence. Then the woman's eyes widened, and her face lit up with something that was more than surprise. It was relief, almost as if she had been waiting for someone, anyone, to say those very words. Her name was Delores, she said, and she was ecstatic to accept the invitation. The waitress led them to a small table by the window. Sunlight poured through the glass, framing them in a gentle glow as if even the universe approved of this unlikely meeting. Brooke wasn't sure what to expect. Sometimes conversations with strangers are brief and shallow, filled with pleasantries and awkward pauses. But the moment they sat down, Delores began to talk, and soon the world outside seemed to fade away. Piece by piece, a story unfolded that made Brooke's heart ache. Delores explained that she had spent the last decade caring for her mother, who had recently passed away. Her aunt, who had been her other companion, was now in a nursing home. For the first time in many years, Delores found herself alone. Alone at the table, alone in her house, alone in life. She admitted that the quiet was unbearable sometimes, that it gnawed at her, turning even the simplest moments into long reminders of everything she had lost. Brooke listened intently, her food barely touched. She realized then that this wasn't just lunch, it was a lifeline. Delores wasn't just grateful. She was healing in real time, pouring out the loneliness that had weighed on her heart. "You don't know how much this means to me," Delores said, her eyes glistening. She kept smiling, over and over, repeating the same words of thanks. Brooke smiled too, feeling something shift inside her. It was as though both of their hearts, one aching and one restless, had found comfort in the simple act of sharing a meal. What Brooke thought would be an ordinary lunch turned into an exchange of stories, laughter, and moments of quiet understanding. Delores spoke, and Brooke listened not with pity, but with genuine care. And in doing so, she discovered something unexpected. Delores' gratitude was giving her a gift too. "This is by far the best decision I've made all year," Brooke later admitted. And Delores? She simply kept smiling, her face brighter than it had been in a long time. But neither of them could have guessed that this chance encounter was only the beginning. The bond that sparked that day at the restaurant would not end when the bill arrived. Instead, it would grow into something deeper, something life-changing for both women. From that day on, Thursdays stopped being ordinary. They became sacred. Brooke and Delores made a simple promise to one another: lunch together every week. What started as a spontaneous invitation grew into a ritual that neither of them wanted to miss. Each Thursday, Brooke would arrive at the little restaurant, scanning the tables until she saw Delores waiting with that familiar smile. And every time, Delores' face lit up the same way, like a child spotting a friend at the schoolyard gates. They ate, they talked, and they laughed. Sometimes their conversations were about the past, Delores sharing memories of her childhood, of her mother's warmth, of years filled with both hardship and joy. Other times they spoke of the present, the small struggles of day-to-day life, or the tiny blessings people often overlook. And sometimes they dreamed aloud about the future, even though deep down Delores knew hers was limited. For Brooke, these Thursdays became a highlight in her life. She didn't realize how much she had needed them too. Her own days, filled with work and responsibility, had been missing something: the depth of a true, unexpected friendship. What she thought would be an act of kindness for a stranger turned into a mirror reflecting the truth that human beings, no matter how different in age or circumstance, are not meant to walk through life alone. The weeks passed, and with each meeting, their bond grew stronger. Brooke began to see Delores not as a stranger, but as family. And in those lunches, Delores found more than just company, she found healing. After years of silence in her home, she had someone who wanted to listen, someone who made her feel seen. But life has a way of reminding us that time is fragile. One Thursday, Brooke arrived at the restaurant with her usual excitement, only to find Delores absent. At first, she thought maybe her friend had been delayed. She waited, sipping water, her eyes fixed on the door. But the minutes turned into an hour. And then the week turned into silence. Later, Brooke received news that broke her heart. Delores had passed away. It was a moment that felt unreal. How could someone who had come to mean so much disappear so suddenly? Yet even in her grief, Brooke realized something profound. Though their time together had been brief, it was not wasted. In those final weeks of Delores' life, she had not been alone. She had laughed, she had talked, she had shared. She had been reminded that she mattered. Brooke's Facebook post about their meeting spread like wildfire, touching millions around the world. People who had never met Delores, who had never set foot in that small Texas restaurant, found themselves deeply moved. They shared the story, commented, and reflected on their own lives. The simple truth struck a universal chord. Kindness doesn't just change others, it changes us too. And that was the legacy Delores left behind. Not wealth, not fame, not possessions, but a reminder that the greatest gift we can give another person is our time, our presence, our willingness to see them. Brooke later wrote that Delores' words healed her heart as much as she had healed Delores' loneliness. It wasn't a one-sided act of generosity. It was an exchange, a circle of grace. One needed to be heard, the other needed to listen, and both walked away transformed. To the world, it was just a viral story on social media. To Brooke, it was a divine appointment, a moment orchestrated by something greater than chance. She called it the power of God. And perhaps she was right. Because if Brooke had walked into that restaurant just a few minutes earlier, or if she had ignored that quiet voice nudging her to speak, their paths may never have crossed. Delores may have eaten her meal in silence, and Brooke may have gone home unchanged. But instead, they found each other just in time. Their story is a gentle reminder for all of us. Life isn't measured by the grand moments, the awards, or the milestones. It's measured in the small decisions we make every day. To hold a door, to share a table, to listen when someone needs to talk. These simple acts may not seem extraordinary, but they carry the power to alter lives in ways we cannot always see.